All right. Oh, camera. Uh-oh. Things are happening. All right. I think we're good now. Monday night, always technical issues. My power went out like 5 minutes before this happened. Luckily, it came back on. So we're here. We made it happen. Hopefully, you guys had a good Monday, a good weekend, and things are off to a good start for your week. Man, oh man. Lots of things shaking out there in the crypto world. Literally, big downward movement over the last couple days here. Rebounding now, though. Looking up. Fear and greed index is low, back down to like 8 or 9. So, you know what we say here, and I should probably start with my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice, only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. And any opinions shared here are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or any of its subsidiaries. So now that we got that out of the way, if you, I said this in the mastermind the other day, if you just traded off of the fear and greed index and nothing else, you would do exceptionally well in crypto. If you waited until things got into extreme fear and got around 10 on the extreme fear or fear and greed index, and then when it got up to extreme greed or into, greed in general and traded off of that, then you'd be buying pretty much the lows and selling pretty much the highs. It's very difficult to, time the market and have the perfect, exit and entry. But if you just use that one indicator in order to be able to trade off of, you'd be doing pretty well on the overall. So not telling you what to do, but with the fear and greed index being at 8, it's right around that 10 mark. You got a lot of people out there telling you that the market's going to go lower and, this isn't the bottom. And that always happens. It always happens around the bottom. That's what people, kind of feed into, and they think that they're going to be able to buy at lower prices. And then the market rebounds and then they miss out. I've watched it happen time and time again. And same thing at the top. Everybody's excited. They're euphoric. They think it's going to keep going up for forever. And inevitably, it doesn't. So as the market has persisted so far and, the constraints have remained the same, that's probably a good indicator on what the market's going to do. Do we hang out for a little bit? Possibly. Is it going to go a whole lot lower? It could. But historically, again, if you just traded off that indicator, you would be doing exceptionally well. So again, can't tell you what to do. I have been buying here on the dip. I know other smart people have been buying here at these levels. Again, could it go lower? Sure. But how much lower is it going to go? Right? It's not playing limbo. If it is, the bar is already pretty much on the floor. So, we're down 60, 70% off the highs for XRP. We're down almost 50% for Bitcoin. Also, Sailor, well played. I don't know. He obviously doesn't watch my stuff, but I would just like to say well played on selling 32 Bitcoin and cratering the market and then executing the huge buy order that he did this morning. Can you call it market manipulation? They're not securities, they're commodities. So I don't know if there'll be any recourse against him on, doing that, but it definitely had the effect that I think they may have wanted on the market in order to be able to average down on their buy. Previously, they were averaging around, I think, $72,000 or $75,000 per Bitcoin, and now they just bought this last tranche at $60,000 per Bitcoin. So, MicroStrategy, and is this maybe like a false narrative too? Maybe they did need to sell some off in order to be able to meet their obligations for the strike product and some of the other stuff that they have going on out there. And this is to reinstill faith in the market before they have a larger dump in the market. I don't know. Okay. I'm just playing along just like you guys, watching the narrative out there, seeing what's going on, and then I come on here and talk about what I'm seeing in the market. So obviously, we've seen a lot of downside. Still watching the Bitcoin versus the XRP chart. That's the one that I prefer to check out. We have bottomed, and we're actually a little bit up off the bottom if you're looking at that chart. I always like to look at assets priced in other assets. I've talked about that before on here, but I'll reiterate it again. Looking at the gold chart, looking at real estate, looking at stocks, if they're priced in dollars, they're going to go up, right? Like dollars are inflationary. They have less and less value over time. So obviously, assets that do have some form of scarcity or retain their value are going to appreciate in dollar terms. If you were to price other things in gold, gold versus real estate, gold versus the S&P, you can see when gold is overvalued in comparison to the mean or the average that we've seen over the past 40, 50 years for those two assets priced in one another. And so that's why I like to look at the XRP versus Bitcoin chart and kind of look at, market cycles in the past. Again, looks as though this chart has bottomed out and we should see XRP appreciate against Bitcoin. Bitcoin dominance still hanging in there. We have seen some of that fall off with the situation with Vcash. Vcash, geez, it's late. Zcash and the exploit there and the code. We have seen that, fall like 50%. So there's a lot of people that really enjoyed that run up. Hopefully people took profits on that one. It's not something I, mess with. Again, I'm just more of a dollar cost average, continue to buy into XRP, similar to, and I've talked about this before too, but a lot of people that run hedge funds or actually actively manage strategies, they will have some of their own cash in the strategies that they're, that they're running. But the large majority of their portfolio, the money that they make from their day to day, they just invest in an index fund. Because it's very passive. It is, continue to dollar cost average over the duration or long term. You should see that do pretty well. It's very rare that you see managers continue to beat the market year over year over year, like Berkshire Hathaway has done. They also have a huge cash position. I've talked about that before, but they could literally buy almost every single company in the S&P 500 all at once, all except for the top 5 or 10 stocks in the S&P. They could buy all of them. So that just tells you how valuable the top 5 or 10 stocks are in that index. Nvidia and Tesla and those others. We also got OpenAI has filed their confidential S1 with the SEC today. So you've got Anthropic, you've got SpaceX, and now you have OpenAI all going to go public in the not too distant future. This is unprecedented. And I actually watched a talk by Michael Saylor the other day talking about this, and he feels like the pressure on Bitcoin and private credit and some of the other stocks is investors taking profits in order to be able to roll those profits into these large mature AI companies because they are consuming so much cash, raising hundreds of billions of dollars on the valuations that they currently have to continue to be able to scale at the rate that they would like to and compete against one another. With SpaceX's acquisition of Grok and XAI, people saying that that's going to be the most profitable company in this part of the galaxy. I don't know if you guys caught that or not. Estimates over the next 5 years are looking at a $30 trillion company. Astronomical. And as things continue to progress here, if the dollar does continue to lose value and we do see the implementation of AI and these other technologies at scale, the GDP and the total value of assets on the planet will continue to explode. So people look at market cap or total GDP today and they think that this is the end all be all. I don't think so. I think we're at the tip of the iceberg here for value creation over the next 5 or 10 years. So buckle up. If you're looking to make some money, I'm sure that there will continue to be opportunities. I think a lot of that's going to be in the private markets where there's still things that are illiquid and there's discrepancies. Also, at the Hamptons Tech Week last week, I was talking with some gentlemen that were on my panel, and we were talking about the what's the poly market? Prediction markets. I guess there's like 3 or 4 different applications that you can use in order to be able to, participate in those prediction markets. And people have figured out how to arbitrage the prediction markets based on the discrepancies in how different bets are being valued on each platform. And so you could take like 3 or 4 positions across there and like end up always making 10 to 20% on your money, which is really interesting. Over time, that'll compress. Anytime there's discrepancies in markets, people will exploit that until there's a regression to the mean. And then, pricing will be the same across all the platforms. We've seen that in crypto. It's very difficult at this point to be able to arbitrage across the exchanges, even though it's how Sam Bankman originally made his money, was buying Bitcoin low on one exchange, sending it to another, and being able to sell it higher on the other one where there was a price discrepancy, right? So people don't think about that in the stock market. There's very tight price feeds between all the exchanges on all the stocks at this point. And so, you'd have to be able to move things in a microsecond in order to be able to arbitrage that. It's just not possible as things sit today. But once it's tokenized here in the near future, DTCC and Swift both should be going live with their pilots on June 28th, 20 days from today. We should see both of those parties move to real-time settlement. And to me, there's really only one way for them to be able to do that, and that's XRP. And I think it's going to have to be a significantly higher price in order to facilitate the implementation of those systems for real-time transfer and payments and settlement. So we'll see what the next 20 days holds. Been wrong before, right? So, take it with a grain of salt, listen to a bunch of people that are smart, and you can come to your own conclusions. But for myself, I'm anticipating something within the next 20 days to be able to implement that. Could they kick the can? Sure. They could absolutely kick the can. The OCC has until July 18th in order to be able to pass the guidelines for stablecoins here in the US. But that could happen anytime. We've closed both the comment period for the public on May 1st, and then here on June 2nd, we finalized the comment period for the Treasury, the FDIC, and the CFTC. Not the CFTC, excuse me. FDIC, FinCEN, and the Treasury all proposed their comments for the OCC and their guidance on June 2nd. So, anytime between now and July 18th, you've also got a couple things happening on July 13th. I believe the pilot for the DTCC goes live on that day. Also, some interesting planetary alignments on July 13th this year. So we'll have to see if the astrology has anything to do with how all this pans out, if you want to put your tinfoil hat on. All right, it's enough of me rambling. Again, appreciate y'all taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me and ask great questions. Again, if you wouldn't mind. Oh, I need to mention this because I was excited. Thank you so much to everybody that has subscribed to the YouTube channel. We now have over 200,000 followers on the YouTube channel. So super, super grateful for everybody that follows along and takes interest in the information that I provide on this channel. I try to provide a lot of value. We do the same in the mastermind and through all the corporations that we have that provide services. So just want to say thank you guys so much for the continued support. And on that note, if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, share, hype it. If you're on YouTube over there, we're also on X, Facebook, and over here on TikTok. All right, let's jump into it. Rick Johnson, good to see you, dude. He says, if Captain Sailor's company sold another 700 Bitcoin in the next few days, keep in mind the recent incident. What would happen to the price of XRP? I think that may have been a one-time deal. Like I said, they've just bought a huge amount of Bitcoin. So the reason that the Bitcoin fell as much as it did is they were the main bidder in the market to be able to hold the price up at the levels that it was. And so without them bidding in the market, we saw a pretty significant fall. Now that they've begun buying again, I don't know that we would see another move to the downside like we have. Again, the fear and greed index is around 8 or 9 at this point. Pretty indicative of a bottom, or maybe the bottom's already happened. Again, Tether, we see implications there, or something else that's a black swan occurs, which is quite possible with the events going on in the Middle East. Maybe we do see a wick to the downside that's pretty nasty, but I think we would see a pretty significant recovery after that. So I don't know that we go a whole lot lower here, but my crystal ball does not show me the future. So your guess is as good as mine. And I would expect that we would see volatility if that were to take place, but I don't know that we're going to see the downside that we saw in this last move. Rob, good to see you, dude. He says, somewhere between trying to catch a falling knife and making the best use of limited dry powder, I am thinking that when the carry trade unwinds, there will be a substantial dip. Your thoughts, not financial advice. I think that we are already starting to see the carry trade unwind. I think it's a slow deal. You saw South Korea's stock market plummet, limit down last night to 8.4% to the downside. Foreign markets are already starting to bleed off. Stocks rallied today on the news that we're going to see a ceasefire in the Middle East. I do expect that we will see, again, it's hard to call tops and bottoms, right? We could have topped in the stock market, but if you lay the Fibonacci, levels over it, again, I'm not a TA person, so forgive me here. But the 1.618 is around 7,900 for the S&P. So I think that we might touch that before we see the wheels fall off this thing. NVIDIA and a lot of the other tech stock said they're continuing to rise. And so that's holding a lot of the market up. Like I just mentioned with Berkshire Hathaway, they could buy 95% of the stocks in the S&P 500, maybe more than that with their cash position. A large majority of what's propping up the stock market is the tech stocks. And so as we see people rotate out of those, there could be another narrative that transpires that I think could cause significant downside, including the reverse carry trade when that does unwind at scale. We're still hanging out around 160. Again, like I told you guys, 160, 161, 162 is where I think the Bank of Japan is going to have to intervene here. They've guarded the line at 160 pretty hard in the past, but with them having their monetary policy meeting on the 15th of this month, we've got 7 days. So next Monday, Sunday night, our time, they should be having, actually it'd be Monday night our time next week, they should be issuing their monetary policy. Many people are expecting them to raise 25 basis points. I don't know. I think that that's priced in at this point, and that's why we've seen the move in the yields. 10-year was back at 2.7 this morning. I can check it out. I've been very busy today, so I haven't got to keep an eye on it all. We're 2.73, not quite back to the all-time high that we've seen in the last 5 years. Really longer than that, the last couple decades of 2.76, but we're not far off. So if we continue to see yields rise going into the monetary policy meeting, around 3% is where it's not very sustainable for the Bank of Japan to continue to pay the interest rates on the bonds. So that's another 10% move from here. If we saw a 10% move in the bonds, in the bond market, I would expect the wheels to come off. That's really where I think things are going to get wild. Also, apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but the other strait on the other side of the peninsula there, Iran has said that they're shutting that down, which is another 12 to 20% of the total global supply of oil. If they were to close that strait as well, you would continue to see oil rise. We did see oil come back down off the news that there was going to be a ceasefire, even after the spike this morning. So, hanging out around 14.5, but consolidating here very tightly on the yen versus oil, crude. So, again, I'm not a TA person, but for this chart to coil up like that, that might happen right before a big move. It's normally pretty jagged and volatile. So for it to be coiling, I could see another big move to the upside in the near future. A lot of people are showing me the charts, I'll tell you the news type thing. Again, best guesses here. So, yet to be seen if that's actually going to be closed or not. If that does transpire and that does happen, I would expect oil to gap up higher again, more than the 4 or 5% that we saw this morning in markets. And When it unwinds, I do think it'll affect crypto. I just don't know how liquid markets are going to be able to. I don't know how liquid the exchanges are going to be in that circumstance, and I don't know if you're going to be able to purchase when that actually plays out. Cuerva, they say, legend. What's up, dude? Imagine the scenario in June 16th, Japan goes under, 17th, Fed lower, 21st, carry trade, 24th, BG rise, rocket rises, 25th, star explodes, and the Sunday on the 25th, Swift goes to T+0 for payments, 99%. Do we need the OCC guidance and T0 before 628? I think it has to be a high price before them for them to implement it. If it's not a high value prior to that date, they won't be able to facilitate that. There won't be enough liquidity in XRP for them to move to real-time settlement. So I do anticipate that we are going to see some type of move in the next 20 days predicated on the fact that they would be using XRP to be able to settle those things. Talked about that for a long time. Swift and Ripple have been on stage together. When they've asked, Swift about using XRP, the guy got really squirrely, didn't want to talk about it. Anytime, the DTCC is over and over again talked about real-time settlement and reconciliation for the back end of the stock market being the first place that they're going to implement things before they move to tokenized stocks, which will start being trialed on the 13th of July. So for them to be implementing T+0 or real-time reconciliation, I'm feeling like the next couple weeks are going to be volatile and probably in a good way. But yeah, the OCC, I do think, would need to come out and issue stablecoin guidance to be able to stabilize the bond market when the reverse carry trade does unwind here. Sona, they say, can you explain the DTCC's announcement? Are the July changes enough for price appreciation, or is October still the key date? So full implementation is supposed to be in October for across all the exchanges for tokenization. They're going to start running pilots for 24/5 here on July 13th, I believe is the date. So with that being the case, they're not going to be implementing Stellar's network until 2027. You've got Ondo, Securitize, Canton, and a few others that people have partnered with. Some of these exchanges have partnered with in order to be able to tokenize their stocks and move to that cadence. So yeah, again, I'm anticipating something within the next 20 days here prior to the 28th of this month when Swift, because Swift is like, if they're going to use XRP, it's got to be a high price by that date for them to start implementing real-time settlement. Rick Johnson, again, he says, I feel great. I just finished a pleasure trip by accompanying my wife's folks to their plane, going back home to Japan. Oh, give us the insights, Rick. Tell us what's going on over there in Japan. We do have a couple people in the mastermind that do reside in Japan, and they're nice enough to stay up late sometimes and come on to the lives and give us the insight on what's actually going on around federal holidays and what they're hearing on the news over there. So people on the ground is always great to hear from. Hey, ma'am, she says, hey, Jake, do you still think that we will get a BlackRock ETF in Q2? If you don't remember, you said you can find it on the May 5th timestamp 1240. Thank you. I do. I think we will get the BlackRock ETF sometime this month. I don't know how they're going to be able to drive XRP to significantly higher prices without that occurring. So also looking for the Evernorth IPO or the finalization of their SPAC for them to be able to trade publicly. I do think that it's a really interesting name, Evernorth, right? Like, I don't know. There's probably a there. So when they go public, I think will also be a marker that things are going ever north from that point on. Keith, he says, sup, Jake? What's up, dude? Did research. It shows only 2% of the daily DTCC volume is settled in payments after batch and net. Beyond Broke Mastermind Carbon 1, not FUD, y'all. Thoughts? So payments after batch and net. I'd have to understand a little bit better what you mean by that. They do batch payments, right? And a lot of that happens the way that it does real right now because it's T plus one. If they could settle real time, I think that the percentage that they would settle, and again, you said net, so that is absolutely T plus one. If it was real time settlement, they wouldn't be just doing 2%; they would be doing all of it. So I know, again, there's a lot of stuff out there. People look at current circumstances and try to apply that on a forward basis. As constraints change, um, things are different. They will not remain stagnant. Things are dynamic. So, again, a lot of people are like, well, you move dates and you move goalposts. As constraints change, my opinions change. I know, but the theory and the directive is still the same. Like, I haven't pivoted at all on exactly what's going to play out, the bigger picture. The nuances within that and what order the dominoes fall in, sure, that's fair. But as far as like the outcome and how we get there, still right on track. All right. We've got Depressive Monkey. Say legend. What's up? Salutations from Panama. Very cool. I just withdraw some coins from my H wallet. Am I exposed? I guess he means cold wallet or hardware wallet. Should I change to another immediately? Quantum hack. I know people are concerned about that, and you should be, right? But I think we're still a little ways off from quantum being a real threat to hardware wallets. 12 months, maybe a little longer. I think that they are probably going to push people toward institutional custody. Senator Warren and many others advocate for people being able to hold their own digital assets, which I do too, right? Like the majority of our clients hold a portion of their assets on a cold wallet, some on an exchange or another brokerage, and they also hold some in institutional custody at Anchorage with our wealth management team. So again, I'm an advocate for diversification, but you do want to hedge and you want to make sure that things are protected in a way that mitigate the risk of quantum. Quantum, as it progresses, will become more and more robust, and they will continue to have to implement different technologies to be able to thwart quantum's ability to access things or encrypt things in a way that are very difficult to be able to decrypt. One of the companies that we've invested in is called IntroKey. If you guys want to go check it out, they have trained their models that create the encryption on solar flares. It's the most entropic thing that's out there in the universe. So many of the, I don't know if you'd call them modules, pieces of hardware that do the encryption are physical pieces of hardware that go inside of data centers. And the resonant frequency off of the data center and the materials around it can cause there to be a repetition in the pattern in which it encrypts the keys, and therefore makes it vulnerable. So a quantum computer could identify that and exploit it. The way that they've structured things at IntroKey, it's a cloud-based deal that's interoperable with any piece of hardware to be able to generate the entropic keys based on the solar flares and the way it's trained. So I think quantum proofing things will be multifaceted or multi-layer. You probably have something like an IntroKey. You'll probably have something else where it shields the keys or the exposed parts in a way where it's difficult for a quantum computer to even find the endpoints or access points. You'll probably have something else that encrypts it in a way that's another layer underneath or over the top of that. And then something else that's on the bottom piece that's also a way to mitigate the risk of that. I think that people will use multiple layers of encryption and safeguards in order to be able to navigate a quantum future. And that's really the only way that you're going to be able to navigate that risk and make sure that your stuff's safe. And if you have a cold wallet and you have exposed both of the keys, again, I am not the expert on this. I'm following in David Schwartz's infinitely higher wisdom than my own. He has stated, to your point here, that if you have exposed both the keys, the key that you're sending in and the key when you send out, that you are at a much higher risk for quantum exposure. So, moving assets to another wallet where you have not sent things out of it or rekeying the exit key would be the way to be able to mitigate that risk, which many institutional custodians do. They rekey the wallet every time. Cotton Clarks, they say, Jake, evening, Beyond Broke Social, LLC, now working with DWP amplification with Ryan. Awesome, dude. Glad to be working with you. He says, question, how would you do RMD or QCD of a qualified account with crypto as the appreciated asset? Can you save the asset? RMD or QCD? I know people abbreviate stuff for the questions, but RMD or QCD? Required minimum distribution for IRS withdrawals, and QCD is qualified charitable donations, typically tax-free direct transfer up to $111,000 from an IRA. Okay, so you're specifically discussing an IRA in this question. Qualified account with crypto appreciated asset. Can you save the asset? I'm not exactly sure what you're asking in the question here. How would you do this? How would you facilitate the minimum required distribution and then also do a qualified charitable donation? So you should be able to do that and meet those thresholds. If you're above the minimum required distribution, that starts at age 73, then you should be fine. Prior to that, you can still take distributions. And depending on the type of product that you have, if it's a Roth or what your age is, there's some other qualifications around that. If you are working with Ryan, those would be great questions for him. I'm sure that he will probably get you with Tom Teal, who is our head CFP over there at DAG Wealth is what it's going to be now. So if you want to contact Ryan and Tom, they could probably walk you through what that's going to look like post-price appreciation and how to get those benefits inside of your IRA. Brandon Q, they say 25 years old. Congratulations if it's your birthday. Happy birthday. Can't thank you enough for changing my mindset on XRP. I'd be broke in a few years without you. Not financial advice. How certain are you on a BlackRock ETF this month? Cool that you found this at such a young age, dude. Kudos to you for having the forethought to even be looking for this type of stuff. Man, I wish I was looking at all this when I was 25, than a decade sooner. Pretty confident. I don't know how else it can get to a significantly higher price if we don't see a BlackRock ETF. I do think that we will see the reverse carry trade. I do think that we will see Evernorth and BlackRock all kind of transpire right down to the wire here before things kick off for Swift and for the back end of the stock market on the 28th. And again, they could push those dates out. They've kicked the can plenty of times in the past, but things feel right this time. So Dragon Lord says, legend. What's up, dude? Thank you guys for the kind words. How is this mobile app coming along? Also, will there be other payment options besides ACH? Thank you for all that you do. God bless you and your family. I'm pretty confident that we already have Wire in there. So that's been a lot of people's friction with Anchorage, is they only do Wire. They don't do ACH. They're an OCC federally chartered bank, and they don't have ACH payments. They are working on it. And I'm hopeful that we will have that in Q3 of this year. They're doing a lot of work, actually. Anchorage is up in their game, and They're continuing to innovate. I think that they're a leader in the space. They're starting to do a lot of the stuff that we've asked for over the past couple years working with them. So kudos to them for upgrading their systems. They brought on some serious people that we're going to be working with in the near future on the wealth management side. And I think that they're seeing the traction in that industry. And we're one of their, if not we're the largest RIA by number of clients. We have over almost 5,000 clients at this point over there at Digital Wealth Partners or DAG Wealth with accounts at Anchorage. The next closest RIA, I think, has like 20 or 30 accounts. So orders of magnitude larger by a number of people than anybody else in the industry. Pretty close on AUM to largest in the industry at around $1 billion that we currently manage. But yeah, over time, we want to work with multiple counterparties and create solutions and be able to provide private banking across the board is really what we would like to have within the app. So if you want lines of credit, if you want to be able to get a mortgage, if you want any type of payment that you want to be able to send different counterparties, hopefully we get, FedWire and FedNow live here by the end of the year. I think that they will be, and you'll have real-time settlement between all the different banks and institutions, even globally through SWIFT, and then moving to real-time settlement using XRP. So yeah, we want to involve all of those things. The biggest initiative after we get through the KYB and the debacle that we're currently going through on the app is going to be, debit cards and credit cards over there. A lot of people want to be able to spend money out of that account, be able to, swipe it into a money market and be earning interest on it on nights and weekends, and then take the money out of that and be able to spend it real time if you need to. Tokenization of money markets. Archax has had theirs for a long time. They've had a tokenized money market on XDC for a year and a half. Would love to work with them. And we really need to circle back with them and Zonic, or not Zonix. What's the other one that uses Ripple custody? Zodia. Yeah, a couple other custodians over there that are international that we want to onboard with in the not too distant future. And then, like I said, we want to be able to develop relationships with all the different custodians that would have different products and services and avenues for you to be able to put your assets to work or to be able to participate in different products or services. And you'd be able to do that out of one unified application working with DAG. This person again, we already did this one. So it probably kicked me up in the chat here. It sure did. So I'm going to scroll on down. We're not quite an hour in yet, so I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom, but we just did that one. Here we go. John, Mr. Jags with a Z, he says, global daily transactions are 21 trillion. Your calculator says $800 XRP with 39.2 circulating supply. How do we get to high 3-digit other than crypto also being used? Seems impossible. How do we get to high 3-digit when other cryptos could also be? Oh, so that's fair. So the primary settlement mechanism will be XRP. If the network gets congested or there's a cheaper way to be able to route payments, then there will be redundancies. But the majority of the volume would settle through XRP, right? So as long as it's scalable and it can meet that demand and there's enough liquidity in the asset, then it will continue to grow and aggregate value as more and more is settled through it, right? That's transaction volume over the network that actually drives the price, not necessarily just tokenized assets. However, that's kind of like a precursor. You need stable coins being traded on the EVM sidechain and being settled through XRP in order for that liquidity to even be there in the first place. And you also need liquidity funneled into XRP through the ETFs. I don't know if you guys saw what Evernorth shared, but pretty much a mass exodus of the Bitcoin ETFs over the last 30 days. And we've seen continued inflows into the XRP ETFs. So they're continuing to buy at a pretty aggressive clip here. And once the supply dwindles, that's when we're going to see the chart gap up. KW1 Irish, they say, Jake, will the people from New York who have signed up for the Uphold app be able to participate when the DWP yield product is offered? So if you are a client of Digital Wealth Partners or DAG Wealth, then yeah, Anchorage has their BIT license. They can provide those products to anybody in New York through the application on Uphold. I don't know that we're going to be able to launch the yield products there in the near future. We will likely have a couple different things that we roll out there that allow you to generate some returns on your assets, but a lot of the institutional products will only be offered through the RIA. So you would need to be a client of the RIA in order to be able to get access to those. But everybody, and they're not wrong. Like, they're like, you don't do anything for the little guy. I want everybody to be able to access whatever products we can create for you. There's guidelines and compliance and oversight and a bunch of other stuff that we have to deal with and navigate. And so, if there's a robo-advisor or access to kind of a self-directed swath or variety of products through the Uphold app, that's kind of where we're headed with it. Until you are under the purview of the RIA, and it's not because we don't want to offer the products direct. Let me be clear about that. The counterparties that we work with will not face off with retail. They won't do it. They will face off with us as the counterparty, and then we face off with our clients. And so we're able to use the aggregate value and get them access to all of those institutional products in a segregated or sub-account manner. So, a lot of people say, don't use the middleman or don't pay people for, institutional custody or all these things. Again, I advocate for both. I think people should hold their assets in a variety of places. We're not the best fit for everybody, but we will be first to market with all of the institutional products that people would want access to. And so if you want to be on the front end of that and be able to participate in those things as they get rolled out, we would love to work with you. But again, not saying we're the end all be all. There's a lot of good solutions out there. There'll be DeFi, and that'll always be a portion of people's portfolio, right? There'll be a portion of your portfolio that you probably want to put in very low risk, yield bearing, return generating things that's sustainable for predictable cash flows and managing your lifestyle and your needs. And then there may be another portion of your portfolio that's probably the smaller portion that you would be a little bit more aggressive with to compound the asset, that you're willing to take on a little bit of risk with, right? Or more risk with. So, yeah, that's what I would say is, if you are a DAG client, they can absolutely work with you in your DAG Wealth. If you are a client of the RIA, they can work with you if you're in New York. Alfredo, hola, what's up, man? He says, love you mucho, jefe. Appreciate it, man. Just wanted to show my appreciation. Been with you in the mastermind since 2024. Thank you, dude. The support does not go unnoticed. I really do appreciate you and everybody else that's there in the community. Over 17,000 people there in the mastermind. So if you guys want to check that out, more in real life events than any other community. We have the Learn, Do, Teach model where we're putting course material together for people. We have an active course that's going live here in the near future to be able to help you set up your family constitution, ethics documents, governance documents, and kind of walk you through what all of that actually looks like and how to be able to do that and structure it the right way. A lot of people are going to need to do that on the front end. Anytime we set up a trust and do more complex estate planning, we do values-based estate planning. And so we want the client to assess, like, what do you want to do with this money? What legacy do you want to leave? Is it more philanthropic? Do you want to pass it down through multiple generations? Is it more lifestyle driven? Is it all three? And what percentage of each one of those is what you're trying to accomplish? So putting together the family constitution, mission statement, core values, principles that you want the family to abide by is a big piece of it. And it also helps drive, what type of entities you should be structuring, how you're holding your assets, what percentages and what type of structure, All of that is pretty much coordinated off of those documents. So again, putting that together, that'll be offered into Carbon One here in the near future. We have a bunch of new modules available for people that are in Carbon One in the mastermind to go through and educate themselves. And then obviously there's higher tiers as well if you're a little bit further along in your journey. So if that sounds cool to you, if you want access to private deals and other stuff, you can go over to beyondbroke.com. We've just upgraded the website. You guys saw the calculator. Max Avery, shout out to him. He's been working with the AIs and the agents out there to really push things along. We're implementing that in our business aggressively to make sure that we're able to meet demand and scale systems and operations in order to be able to meet the demand that we think is right on the horizon here. So go check it out, beyondbroke.com, and you can use the code beyondbroke. 1MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in social or Carbon One. And again, if you don't like it, if it's not a good fit, and it's not for everybody, it's month to month, cancel anytime, no contract. But for 17,000 people to hang out there on a regular basis, should tell you something about the value that's provided. Jan, they say, hey, Mr. Jake, legend. Appreciate you, dude. I already have a company that I do firm business out of, and I have monies go through 10K a few times. Can I use that account for crypto, or should I separate the LLC? Thanks for all that you do. Well, this is actually, a lot of people have asked this question. So you already have a company that you run business through. How much liability does that business have? If it's another property, you probably don't want to commingle those assets because somebody could sue you. They fall on your property. That has a higher liability. If you're a doctor, if you are somebody that works with equipment or something on a regular basis, you probably want to silo that liability away from your digital assets and set up another corporation to manage those. You said Inc. So I'm going to assume that you're using an S Corp or a C Corp, just by what you indicated there. So an LLC would be the ideal way to structure that. You don't necessarily want to hold digital assets inside of a C Corp or S Corp because there's issued stock with that. If there is a creditor that takes control of the stock or the majority share, they could liquidate those assets, pay themselves back, and then leave you with the worthless stock. LLCs have equity units, so they operate a little bit differently. There's creditor protection there, similar to what you would have with a traditional corporation. But you can file an S Corp election as long as you meet certain criteria in order to be able to get the pass-through taxation. So you're not taxed at the corporate level and then again at the personal level. I would, again, nothing here is legal or tax advice. You should always consult with an attorney or a CPA before making any tax or legal decisions. I didn't put that in my disclaimer earlier, but I will go ahead and mention it now. I know enough to be dangerous, but I can tell you that most often we do see most people separate their assets out from their operating business. I've talked about this before, but I'll circle back to it. So there's like 3 courses in college that I actually still use today. One of those courses was business law. And the example that my professor gave me at the University of North Texas when he gave this talk about LLCs and why they're important was, imagine you have a lawn care business, okay? And you have equipment, you have assets, you have trucks, you have mowers, you have all these things that you use in order to be able to perform the service that you're performing. You would have that in a holding company or an LLC that you owned separately of your service company, and you would rent all of that equipment through a contract to the service company in order to be able to perform the services. That way, if somebody that was in the service company was driving the truck and rear-ended somebody, or they hit a water pipe or a gas line or something else doing the yard work, and you are sued for losses, the service company can just be set down because there's no assets there. You would just migrate all the personnel to a new corporation. You could file bankruptcy with the other one. They could put a lien against it. They're not going to get anything. You could open up another corporation and lend the assets back to the new one and continue to operate your business. You often see this with apartment complexes. So there's a service company that manages the apartment complex. If somebody falls on the apartment complex or gets hurt and they sue the apartment complex, they often will sue the service company, and they will just shut that one down, and you'll see the sign change, and there'll be a new name that it's operating under, and they will lease the property back to the other service company that actually leases it to you. So you want to segregate liability from the assets that you hold. And again, it just really depends on the firm and the business that you run, and how much liability is associated with that. But if it is a S corp or C corp, probably would want to set up a separate LLC. Like the champ, man, I finally made it back on one of these. Been watching them Tuesdays. God bless everyone. I never go to the Beano, and turned 100 to 160 on blackjack. Looks like luck is on my side and is coming. Let's ride. Awesome, dude. Congratulations. See, that's what happens. That's what I take to the casino with me. Is I'm assuming it means casino by Beano. If I lose the $100, then I'm out. But if I double my money, I put the other 100 back in my pocket, and I keep gambling with the original $100. So congratulations. And I always start with like slots, and then if I'm down on slots, I'll go over the blackjack table and try to win it back, and I usually do. So blackjack is my preferred game if I'm gambling. XRP for the kingdom, very cool name. They say, thank you for all that you do. Do you have thoughts on the ways and means meeting tomorrow on rules for crypto taxation? Didn't know that was going on. I would love to see no capital gains tax for crypto. Yes, this is my real account. I have hands. I'm not AI. Somebody asked me over here on TikTok. I haven't seen it. I would love to see certain things come out. So one of the other things that has caused some frictions or issues is like a receipt token or a wrapped asset. If you mint that asset on another blockchain, then right now that's a taxable event, being able to convert one asset for the other. So I'd like to see that changed. Yes, ma'am. What? No, TikTok's. I don't know. Shows me still on here. I don't. All right, well, too bad, so sad for the TikTokers. Everybody on YouTube still sees me. It'll be fine. Yeah, so there's a couple different things on the crypto taxation side that I would like to see implemented or changed. And again, would advocate for no capital gains tax on crypto, just like everybody else. I don't know that we're going to get that, though. We'll have to see what they come back with, and if it's put out there, I will definitely address it. Dogman, he says, Jake, have you heard of the Carl network? And what do you think? Please look it up if you haven't. Do you think they'll still use XRP on this network too? Instead, and what you think about Carl network? If I've never heard of it before, it's probably not something that's, not to be mean, or baity. But I kind of live and breathe this space every day. So for it to be outside my purview, most things that people mention, I've at least heard of it. I've never heard of this before in my entire life. So Carl solution, no. I'm going to try the Carl network crypto. So I just tried to Google Carl network and it did not even come up. I had to put in Carl network crypto. Carl token built on the Solana blockchain is not a standalone smart contract platform or L1 network. The token leans heavily into the Moon branding, frequently tied to prominent crypto influencer Carl Runfelt. 99.99 million tokens. I'm going to say no, just based on the minimal information that I can assess here. I could be completely wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you make a lot of money. But based on what I'm seeing here, it doesn't look like anything of value. Are we there yet? They say, do all these new IPOs set to come out need to happen before they let the reverse carry trade unwind at scale? Guess who bought the dippity dip this weekend? Me. Thank you for all that not financial advice. God bless. I mean, with OpenAI just now filing their S1, could they go public in the next 20 days? If everything was already buttoned up, just so like ETFs can go pretty quickly, especially if there's already a standard in place and it meets all the criteria that's been outlaid for that. New companies, when they file an S1, or if they're going to go through public through a SPAC with an S4, they tend to go back and forth at the SEC a couple different times before they actually get listed. You will know when they're going to get listed, weeks before the IPO date, because a lot of them have private shareholders that need to move their shares around. It's only 30 to 45 days at a minimum after an S1 is filed before a company would go public. Oftentimes it's longer than that, especially if it's an IPO. So I highly doubt, if this is going to transpire in the next 20 days, that we're going to see those IPOs happen prior to the reverse carry trade unwind. However, that could be a net benefit for all the investors that buy in at the IPO. That would allow them to gain, more upside. They would probably be more attractive on price point. And if that's the case, then, more people would buy in and try to own the stock. So I think it's a net benefit if they wait till the other side of the reverse carry trade unwinding, because I do think it's going to be a V bottom. I think it's going to be a very fast recovery, personally. Let's try something else. TikTok has decided not to work, so I'm going to take this off the Wi-Fi, and we'll see if we can just run it on the regular deal. There it goes. Now TikTok's working. That's not what I want. Okay. Rockhawk Jayhawk, good to see you. They say, legend. My best friend is in town from Japan picking up his cold wallet. He has a California license, but a FPOAP address military. Can he still set up an LLC and get institutional custody after price appreciation? Thank you. Yeah. If he's domestic here in the US, sure. We'd love to work with him. If he has dual citizenship, or if he just has a visa to be able to go over there to Japan and do what he's doing, that's not an issue. As long as you're a US citizen, and even if you're not a US citizen, we could still work with you. It's just a little bit more cumbersome. You have to get a TIN number, and oftentimes it's not the best idea to have a nexus to the US if you are international, because you are going to basically tie yourself into the US tax code, and depending on which jurisdiction you're in or where you plan to move to post price appreciation, it may not be the best idea. You would definitely want to work with an estate planner and somebody else that's familiar with the tax code in your jurisdiction where you plan to move, and in the US tax code, to be able to make the best decision for you and your family. Be Thou AI says, I think that SpaceX is a liquidity trap. Launch on the 12th, can't short it until 3 days later, but on the third day, BOJ has their meeting, the 16th, they raise interest rates, SpaceX dips, yen carry trade begins. That's a very sound thesis. That's right in the period of time that I think things are going to transpire here. We should see the Bank of Japan raise interest rates, and if they don't do it prior to their meeting, they would do it during their meeting. I think that they're going to be a little more aggressive than people anticipate. I think it's going to be more than 25 basis points that they raise, and that would, allow them to save their currency, strengthen it against the, the dollar. And then I think that we'll see Warsh come in and immediately lower interest rates on our side, which will accelerate the reverse carry trade and the unwind there. But we need OCC. We need the OCC to come out with stablecoin regulation and guidance to make sure that we can stabilize the bond market. Switching Squid Gaming, excuse me. Say 1 to 10, how confident are you in the BlackRock ETF by July? 9. I'm 90%. Yeah, I'll go that high, maybe more. Marshall, they say, hey, Brooks Koepka, soon Beyond Broke Mastermind 2 member. Do you think he's able to buy a home directly with XRP after price appreciation? When you come to the UK, God bless you and the Tea Lady fam. I wanted to come to London next week, actually, but unfortunately, I have some prior engagements that I've got to deal with. There's an event there on the 18th through the 20th that was in London that I would have liked to have gone to, but won't be able to. So I don't know. I don't know when I'm going to be coming to the UK, but that's on the bucket list. It's definitely something that I want to do in the near future, probably sometime in 2026. We will make our way to the UK. Late in the year, probably Dubai, and also Seoul or Korea over there in Southeast Asia. So, but yeah, do you think we'll be able to directly buy a home with XRP after price appreciation? Depends on who you're buying a home from and which broker you use in order to be able to facilitate that transaction. There are some that already take crypto, Milo being one of those, as a lender that will cross-collateralize your crypto for a loan here in the US. I'm sure that there's some in the UK. I'll have to reach out to Archax. I bet if I talk to Graham over there, he would have some insight into which lenders there in the UK are willing to take crypto or cross-collateralize the crypto and the property to be able to finance it. Scott, Mr. Maddox, he says, good evening. I have a minimum XRP for DWP, but not accredited. Does that make sense to move to DWP and pay AUM fees at this time to get ahead of the crowd, post-price appreciation? Can I move to DWP without being accredited? Yes, you can. I'm going to tell you what you can do. And my team's not going to like this, but I'm honest to a fault. So you get a little while before you have to fund your account over there at DWP. I think it's like 30 or 45 days once you've set up the account that they would like you to fund it within. So you could go ahead and set your account up, get everything situated, get through KYB, KYC. And if you anticipated a yield product being available in the next 30 to 45 days, or price appreciation during that period of time, then you'd already have it set up and be able to participate and get in there very quickly. So if you do have close to the amount required or right at the amount required, you might go ahead and set that account up and then just wait to fund it until things progress here, if you wanted to be proactive. Again, my team's going to be mad at me for saying that, but that's literally what it says in there. You have like 30 to 45 days to fund your account after you've set it up. So you have a little bit of time, and there's a grace period in there if you don't want to be charged the AUM fees in the short term until there's a way to be able to make sure that you're covering those costs or some price appreciation would occur. And then you would be accredited anyway. Keith, again, he says DTCC, T+0 means trace Eckham throughout the trading day, net at 9 p.m., resulting net obligations, approximately 2% gross volume after 98% net. It is explicitly not real-time gross settlement on every individual trade. Okay. If that's what they have listed there, then they're going to be batching that at the end of the day. But that's still going to be the total volume of trades that are netted at the end of the day. So, look, you can put it in whatever math you want to put in there, my man. I don't think that there's going to be anywhere near 39.6 or whatever you put in there for total circulating supply used for that application. I think it's going to be closer to 1 to 2 billion XRP available in that circumstance. I think it's far, far less than most people are anticipating. So maybe even less than that. So try that again. give it 2% of what you said, and then move the circulating supply significantly lower and see what you get for price appreciation. And again, that's the minimum amount required in order to be able to facilitate that. It's not to say that the price of XRP won't be substantially higher because there's additional volume on the network for other applications outside of settlement on the back end of the stock market. Let's see here. Brandon, he says, we're going to a technocracy. I think so too. And might prefer it if Epstein's clients and Leering center corruption. I prefer it to all of the things that have gone on. Will it be a hybrid with voting? What measures might be taken or needed to prevent corruption? So I've been diving deep on this here recently because it's becoming more and more apparent to me that we are going to move toward a technocratic society. So I forget the gentleman's name, but his last name was Scott. If you go look it up, you can just Google technocracy. You can also go watch a bunch of videos on YouTube if you would like to. It's a very data-driven society. So you would have to be able to quantify all the data and efficiencies across the economy. And until we have AI implemented and machine learning and blockchain across all the different, everything, which I do think is coming next 3 to 5 years, at that point, you could have guide rails around an AI that could provide that data to a centralized cohort of people that were experts in their domain that could still provide the creative solutions that an AI, I don't know that an AI will ever get to being as creative as a person, even if it's sentient. I think that people come up with very outside the box things in order to be able to accomplish objectives. And I think that that's our value. And that's why AI just augments all of the standardized work and menial tasks and repetitive things that take up a bunch of time and allows people to then operate at a more creative level. So if all of the smartest engineers and scientists and experts across different domains were voted by their peers, so technically there will be voting, but it'll be their peers in that category that would vote for the best one to sit on that board. And then the board of all of those people would then vote for kind of like the chairman of the board that would have like final say so if there's a disagreement between, a certain number of people on the board. I do think that it'll be quasi-capitalism for a while. I do think that there'll be, the other premise behind that is that like a lot of the promises that were made by Scott were that you would, from 25 to 40 years old, you would have to work 4 hours a day for 4 days a week, and you would still get like 100 days off a year. And the production of society, because of the efficiencies with robotics and AI, would still far surpass anything that human society could ever produce, which I tend to agree with. And there would be an abundance of efficiency and energy, and you would basically get issued energy credits that would expire. So if they were issued on blockchain, they could absolutely do this, where the additional output of the technocrat, which would be like the total like North American center, would be evenly distributed across everybody. But I think that there's still going to be a way for people to generate additional value in society outside like socialism or communism, where everything's just evenly blanketed across everybody. It does solve some problems, but it creates others. But if the AI could allocate those resources and incentivize or disincentivize spending in certain sectors of the economy when there's a discrepancy, now you have a way to be able to allocate resources and close gaps when there are those issues, which capitalism solves itself. The issue with capitalism is emotions that people have. It tends to have wild swings one direction to the other. So if you don't know what a technocracy is, go do some Googling on it. Trump just flew the top 16 executives of the largest corporations in the US to China with him. I think that's a nod to us moving that direction. And then, one of the key factors here is Scott was actually the gentleman that was the head of that party was actually Elon Musk's grandpa. So, and obviously he's a huge advocate for data-driven society and Starlink and surveillance and all of the implementation of all this stuff. So I don't know that there's a way to stop it. I don't think you could at this point if you tried. I think it's already in motion. But if you can, just like with XRP and the other things that are out there, if you can see what's coming, you can try to position yourself in a way that you'll benefit from that outcome rather than being on the wrong side of it. All right, we are an hour in, so I'm going to go all the way to the bottom here. And I'm going to work my way back up through the super chats. Again, if we missed your super chat, I'm sure we missed some last week on Wednesday. Had some other things going on, so my wife hasn't been as on top of it. Praying for her. She's doing the best she can with what she has. But if we did miss a super chat for whatever reason, we will try to circle back and we'll get those on Wednesday. And that includes tonight if I missed one as well. KT Baby, good to see you, ma'am. She says, Jake and the Tea Lady, going to need y'all to flip the switch by July. If you don't, you're going to need to make a space for me with the horses. Please, price appreciation. Like I just said, they've moved dates plenty of times. People thought ISO 20022 was going to be the thing. Obviously, it wasn't. And again, like David Schwartz and many other people at Ripple continued to echo that it's just a messaging standard. It was not going to be real-time settlement. We are moving to real-time settlement. The DTCC is moving to T+0, and now SWIFT is also moving to real-time settlement, both on the same day. Interesting. June 28th. So again, in my infinite wisdom that is not so infinite, and my best guessing, I see a significantly higher price for XRP in order to be able to facilitate that. Dogman again, he says, still haven't received my LLC minutes from 2025. Who do I contact? Did you do them? If you didn't do them, then you don't have them. It does require some work on your part in order to get the minutes for the LLC. If it was with Laughlin from when we were partnered with them, you would have received emails from them asking you to complete certain things. We have automated all of that in the app now, though. So you will get notifications. It's going to ask you a few questions. And once you answer those few questions, that's then cataloged and it generates them for you so that it's all right there and it's easily accessible. So that's on a go-forward basis. So anything previously, we are working to migrate that information over, but you should reach out to Laughlin and tell them to send them to DAG, and we will get them in your account over there if you have them. Tom, Mr. Corwin, he says, I have a small amount of XRP. I put it in a vault on Uphold. How is that compared to a cold wallet? So it is a cold wallet. They use a segregated infrastructure to be able to provide the vault product that they have. You can only send it back to Uphold. So that's one stark distance from a regular cold wallet. The other net benefit that they have versus a traditional cold wallet is that they hold a third key. It can't transact, they can't access your assets, they can't move anything or do anything. But God forbid you lose the keys that you set up or the passwords, they can regenerate it for you. If your family has access to it, then they could regenerate it for them also. They need to provide your death certificate and do some other things, I think, for that to happen. But there's a little bit more continuity versus assets being directly held on Uphold or another brokerage site. It's secure. They do a good job on that side. Has a large breadth of assets. That's good. Actually, I think it's just XRP and Bitcoin. They may have expanded that. I'd have to go look at it to know for sure. The last time I looked at it, it was just XRP and Bitcoin that you could hold in the vault. But if that's the case, then another cold wallet would provide you a much larger breadth of asset that you could allocate to or hold in that cold wallet. I like Decent. They are an affiliate of ours. There are one partner on this channel, aside from the companies that I own the majority share in. So again, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Just understand, like, I do own those. Um, but yeah, we get like $5 if you buy a decent wallet. So I like that because it has a biometric. It does have like a little code to be able to get into it. If, God forbid something happens to you and you can't use your thumb in order to be able to get in there. The UI is really intuitive. It's easy to use. They have a very large breadth of assets. They have a couple ways that you can actually generate returns on your XRP inside of that cold wallet, which is cool. If you are not a US citizen, by the way. So, offhand, those would be the differences that I would provide you. But again, great solution. And I think it is worth paying for. I do like Uphold and what they put together. Robert Threer, this is Jake. Give me your honest opinion on the Crypto Bank social, please. Thanks. So, actually, they office across the hall from us. So I run into them infrequently in the building, and I asked one of the ladies that works there about that token not too long ago. So their primary demographic is credit unions and small banks. They help them adopt crypto payment rails and also be able to provide the ability to trade crypto to their clients at the bank, which is cool. If you are a member of the Credit Union of Texas, like I am, then you are able to trade crypto right out of your credit union account, which is cool. Their token hasn't performed great yet, but as they see more adoption for their infrastructure and the banks don't want to issue their own stable coin, they might leverage Bank Social's network, their token, and a stable coin on that network. So yeah, is it going to be gangbusters and go to the moon and go crazy? Maybe, but it's not something that I currently hold or am invested in. Brent, he says, "Hey Jake, you mentioned that when all this plays out, you want a seat at the table. Thoughts on forming a board, some DAG clients that will be in a similar position as you and in other states? Thanks." That's interesting. I hadn't considered that. We've thought about doing like a customer committee type thing, similar to what like a credit union does, just to get feedback, and that way people that are clients have an appointed somebody that they can talk to and they can advocate on their behalf for certain things. I don't know that everybody really understands what I mean when I say that. There's a lot of things that come along with that I can guarantee you most people do not want. There are people that are not nice at that table. You have to be able to move and operate in a certain way and just understand that like that's how that works. So my whole point with it though is I want to advocate for good. I want to advocate for the little person. I want to make sure that people don't lose opportunity to move up in the world or be afforded the opportunity to do so if they are so inclined and they want to put in the work and the effort and they have the grit and like perseverance to be able to actually execute on something and create something of value. Like I just mentioned, if we move to a technocracy and everybody's issued the same amount of credits, what's the incentive for you to be able to create fantastic things that create value in society? Not a whole lot, right? Like your standard of living is not going to improve. I'm a chase the carrot type person. If it's a big enough dream, if it's a big enough vision, if the upside's big enough, I'll roll it. Most people aren't that way. Most people value security and they want a steady income. They want something that's reliable, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There are very few people that I think would be willing to make the trades that I have in my life. And again, I don't say that with ego or to be biggity. I just mean like there's a profound amount of suffering that's required to get to the table. But if I'm able to put together a cohort of people that I can then talk to about things that I can take back to the table, that is a really good idea. And then I can deal with all the other stuff. But I would have a mastermind. I would have a brain trust of people that I could go to and collaborate with to come up with better solutions or think critically through things. So definitely a good idea. And I'm always willing to learn from people that are older than me, have more wisdom than me. They have expertise in things that I've never heard about or done in my life. And that's how you get better, right? And that's, again, kind of the whole premise of the mastermind is you want to be around different people from different backgrounds with expertise that think about things differently, that they can share some of their experiences with you, and you could potentially apply that to what you're doing. And again, think outside the box versus, the norm and what has always been done. Or feeling like you're backed into a corner and you really don't have a way out. Steve, he says, what's your thoughts on SpaceX IPO, all going on chain with Ondo? What do you think on this? Thank you so much for everything that you do. Is it all going on chain with Ondo? I would be surprised if we saw all of their IPO go on chain with Ondo right out the gate. Maybe a portion of it. But if that has been stated somewhere, let's give it a go here. Tokenized SpaceX stock. SpaceX does not currently have an official or publicly traded equity. However, retail investors can gain exposure to tokenized synthetic shares of SpaceX through digital asset platforms and cryptocurrency exchanges. These tokens track SpaceX implied market valuation, but do not confer actual company ownership, voting rights, or dividends. So it's a proxy or a synthetic stock that's been issued on chain that's not representative of the actual shares in SpaceX. The tokenization of the shares themselves would be something separate, right? So that's kind of like a tokenized derivative that just tracks the price of the underlying shares, but doesn't. I wonder how they're backing that. Yeah, I'd have to understand more before I gave you my reasoning or my opinion on it. Textured Puma, they say, have you looked into Circle's ARC Layer 1 USDC as a bridge in gas? Big companies involved in the seed round. Please tell me why I shouldn't be terrified. We talked about that, there were some rumors circulating that Ripple would acquire Circle and go public through an RTO or a reverse merger. I still think that might end up happening. I think that makes a lot of sense on the way that they would go public. So I think Ripple has good intentions. I think that they can set some governance around that and put things in place. I do think that stablecoins will absolutely be a thing here in the US. We were talking to Stripe about payment processing, and there's a reduction in cost or fees if they, you transact in stablecoins. We're going to be turning that on in the near future. So there's a lot of net benefits to it, but to your point, like some of it's a little scary also. So just, like anything else, you want to understand the risks when participating in certain ecosystems. Issued assets can be clawed back, they can be frozen, they can be whatever by the issuer of those assets. So just be aware of that if you are transacting with them. JL1313 says, hey Jake, fairly new to digital assets, so I appreciate your time and opinions on Mondays and Wednesday nights. Question, I custody with Cable and Brown. Any issues I may have moving to DWP after price appreciation? We have ongoing litigation with them, so I can't really comment on that one. If you would like to go look at the case, then you can go check that out alongside Zach's case in Washington. Let's see, the old nail pounder. He says, "Hola, senor. What's up, dude? I heard DAG is doing monthly LLC reporting. Laughlin did quarterly. What's the difference?" Hola to the tea lady. Godspeed to price appreciation. God bless. I think people would want something on a monthly cadence, right? It's going to help protect you in court. And a lot of it's being automated through our application again that you're not going to get over there with them. They were a good partner while we were partners with them. I'm a little disappointed in how they've handled. Well, I'm not a little. I'm very disappointed, to be honest with you, in how they've handled the transition, separating ways with them. But hey, that's business, part of the deal. So, what we're trying to do is provide the highest level and standard that we can for our clients. We want to make sure that people are taken care of and are getting the best service possible. So that's what we're trying to do. Let's see here. Keith, again, he says it takes the 4.7 quadrillion to $94 million per year if XRP got 100% payment volume. How bad does this change the price predictions if my research is true? It doesn't for me. Swift still settles $5 to $6 trillion daily. FX is similar, $6-7 trillion daily. Commodities on that market also, $3 to $5 trillion daily. The back end of the stock market's all the way up to 11 point something trillion dollars in a single day that they've settled. And that's only going to expand over time. So that's the other piece of this that I think a lot of people aren't quantifying. And I mentioned that earlier. As we see more value created in the economy and we continue to see higher and higher market caps for these stocks and more people trading them because it's going to be able to democratize access, the volume of trades is actually going to go up exponentially. So, that sounds like a lot today, $4.7 quadrillion per year. That could be hundreds of quadrillions of dollars per year in the next 5 to 6 years. So you could imagine the volume, just 2% of that, if it does just move to net, and they do a batch payment for the 2%, even that's still pretty substantial over the long term. So for me, as we see GDP and market caps and all these things continue to expand and go up into the right, XRP ends up being worth a lot of money. Any way you slice it. Brandon, again, we already did this one with the Technocracy. We already did that one. We did Scott. I think I got through all of the super chats. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and we're going to go back through a few more, and then we'll probably wrap it up tonight a little bit early. We got the Garrett Mendoza, my man. He says, do you think banks will do a cash-backed crypto loans eventually? Would like to buy a house without selling. So again, we already have a partner, Milo, that'll allow you to collateralize your XRP, Solana, Ethereum, or Bitcoin with the property that you are buying. And they can use that as the down payment without actually having to liquidate the digital assets. So as things progress here, I do think that banks, traditional lenders, will likely underwrite those at much lower interest rates and much higher LTVs. Especially with the BIS coming out and giving designations to those 4 cryptos here this month in Q2. So that's the other thing that a lot of people haven't even talked about tonight that I do want to mention one more time. The BIS said that they would be giving designations to those 4 cryptocurrencies in Q2 of this year. So we have 23 more days, 22 more days, somewhere in there, left in this month. And I do expect to see the BIS come out and give designations. And I'm hopeful, just like I've said before, that XRP will end up with a tier 1 designation by the BIS. Dogman again, he says, Carrie. Oh, last letter is an I, not an L. Sorry, my bad. There was a Carl token too. That's Carrie token. Carrie network. Okay. A new standard for powering digital money. Just off the rip, I don't think that this is going to be used at all, but I will continue to dig here. I think that they're way late to the game. There's a lot of people that realize that this is a problem, but they're not going to beat out Ripple in what they're doing. Carry Network. Carry Network brings tokenized deposits to U.S. banking system. ZK Sync, so that's a zero knowledge sync. Providium is a private permissioned L2 platform built on zero knowledge sync platform and anchored to Ethereum for security and settlement integrity. Carry Network is a governed tokenized deposit network built on Providium, a private permissioned layer 2 anchored in Ethereum, developed with 5 founding U.S. regional partner banks: Huntington National Bank, First Horizon, MT Bank, Key Bank, and Old National. The network enables regulated financial institutions to issue digital representation of bank deposits over a shared blockchain infrastructure. Unlike stablecoins issued by non-bank entities, Carry Network deposits are direct liabilities, and participating banks preserve all regulatory protections of trademark of traditional bank money while enabling 24/7 programmable. So it's tokenized deposits. Not for me. I mean, just I know that there's already tokenized deposits on many other blockchains that are not L2s anchored to Ethereum. Ethereum is slow and expensive to move anything on. Anything that's a layer 2 isn't going to be accepted by the banks. They want layer 1s that are interoperable with other layer 1s. That's why you've got Axelar, Wormhole, and all the things that are interoperable with the XRPL. Could that be one small niche application for medium-sized banks? Potentially, but I don't know why they wouldn't just use RippleNet, because they can do tokenized deposits also, or Hedera. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're extremely successful. And I missed the boat on that one. And the people that participate there make a lot of money, and it's just an oversight on my part. I appreciate you correcting it, though, because that did make a lot more sense than Carl Token. We already did KT Baby. I think I may have gotten through all the super chats. We got 2 more here. Old Nail Pounder, he says Carbon One, a few K short of onboarding with DAG. Don't have a contact yet at DAG. Should I just email support? Yeah, just email support at digitalfamilyoffice.io, and our team there can get with you. If you do want to set up the LLC, a lot of people have talked about that tonight. You can go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com. We'll take you to the portal there. You can structure the LLC. We set up everything end to end for you, maintain it, do all the whole kit and caboodle for $1,500. Registered agent, EIN, articles of organization, certificate of good standing, banking memorandum. Takes a little while to set up the bank account with Uphold there in the app. If you want to do that, you can also always still set up your own bank account at Old Glory Bank. Old Glory's been great to be able to structure accounts, to be able to manage your digital assets. And then we do the meeting minutes and all the corporate protections to maintain your anonymity and your creditor protection there in Wyoming. So again, digital ascension group, app.digitalascensiongroup.com. We already did this one. There was one more down here, and I'll grab it. CJ Magical Adventures. He says, or she says, I don't know. With DAG, where does any certified mail get delivered to for the mail that has been delivered to a live person? Is it to our address, or does DAG have a delivery to your office instead of Laughlin? The registered agent their address is where that's delivered. If that's what you want to use for certified mail, and they have a what's it called? Virtual office. They'll catalog the mail, and then it's just emailed to you. And if you want the physical copy, they can mail that on to you at your home address. So yeah, we have all that structured with our registered agent as well. I never get to take anything over here on TikTok, so I'm going to grab one. Wind Clarity Act. Actually just made a video on this, on how and why XRP does not need the Clarity Act in order to be able to see price appreciation and use. I'm not feeling good about it getting passed before midterms. Again, like I told everybody in 2026, I was on Capitol Hill advocating for both pieces of legislation, both the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, when it passed the House. Then it got stalled in the Senate, and that's exactly what they said on the Hill. And now I'm hearing, that there's a pretty good potential that it's not going to get passed, until later this year. So I anticipate that we'll probably be after midterms when we see the Clarity Act. I would love to be wrong. I'm still 5% that there's a possibility that we could see it before midterms, predicated on the fact that we would see a catalyst that moved that to the front of their priority list. They did not pass the SAVE Act, which not surprised by that, but at the same time, very disappointed that they didn't pass that. We also have the PACE Act and some other legislation that they could be voting on. So yeah, I think that we're probably going to see August recess before, because it's still got to make it through the Senate. It's got to go back to the House and get voted on in the House, and then it goes to the president's desk to be signed. They need another 7 Democrats to vote toward the yes to be able to overcome the filibuster in the Senate. So I don't know, man. I'm not hopeful for it. Again, would love to be wrong. Would love to see it get passed, but I think a lot of crypto is going to get left behind. Anything that the CFTC and the SEC haven't issued joint guidance on, I think is going to be left out, in ambiguity for a little while. Let's see here. Where can I email Jake? He missed my super chat, but it's okay. You can just email it to info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. Anybody that I did miss your super chat, I apologize. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I do my best, and we will get it if you email it to us. My wife is nice enough to print them out for me, and I read them off before we'll get going on Wednesday. I am speaking tomorrow at an event here in Dallas. There's a conference, so I'll be doing that middle of the day, and advocating for what we're doing with Digital Wealth Partners. If you know an RIA that would like to provide crypto to their client base that doesn't really have a way to be able to do that currently, we are doing that now for other RIAs. So we provide sub-advisory. That's our enterprise application and B2B side. So if you know a wealth manager that does not deal with crypto but would like to, they can reach out to us at digitalwealthpartners.net, and that's what I'm going to be speaking on tomorrow. Says what? Not perfect. Definitely not. Only perfect person was Jesus, and I am definitely not Jesus. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it. We're a little bit early tonight, but again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me. We'd love to see you over there in the mastermind. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but again, if you missed it, it's at beyondbroke.com. Use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized #1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in the group. More in real life events than any other community. Tons of education, courses, access to private deals, high-level speakers on multiple topics all the time. We try to provide a ton value there in the mastermind. More value than I've ever got from any other mastermind that I've participated in. And I've paid a lot of money to be in other groups. So go check it out. Again, if you want the LLC, you can go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com and we'll hook it up. You can migrate your LLC from Laughlin if you still need to do that. And then if you do want trust and more complex estate planning or access to the bill pay and the other services we provide, all you got to do is go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. And then last but not least, if you do want the institutional custody wealth management, access to institutional products to be able to put your digital assets to work, you can go over there to digitalwealthpartners.net and go to the contact us form and fill that out. You do need at least 50,000 XRP or at least $100,000 in total crypto portfolio to work with us on that side. So with that, I'm going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful night, a wonderful week, and we will see you on Wednesday or the next one, whatever you want to say. We'll see y'all.